Judiciary Committee will come to order. Today we'll vote on 5 judicial nominees and 1 U.S. Marshal nominee. We have one bill before us as well, Senate Bill 2220, the PREVAIL Act, sponsored by Senators Coons and Tillis, co-sponsored Senator Hirono and myself. I will reserve my comments on the bill until a later point.
Mr. Chairman, while we wait for the ranking member, do you want me to just give my opening remarks on the PREVAIL Act, which we will then proceed to mark up in the interest of time and proceeding swiftly, given a number of us, I think, have other appointments?
Yes, go ahead and proceed.
I just want to thank you, Chairman Durbin, ranking member, and I will, as soon as we have everyone present, call up the manager's amendment to the PREVAIL Act. But just by way of introduction, I want to thank the co-sponsors. My partner in this work on the Intellectual Property Subcommittee has been Senator Tillis, and we've done hearing after hearing over a number of Congresses. I care deeply about our patent system, and I've been working with Senator Tillis on this for almost a decade, and I want to thank Senators Durbin and Hirono for being great co-sponsors. The core issue here is that more than a decade ago, the American Invents Act established procedures, post-grant review proceedings with the Patent Trial and Appeal Board, or PTAB, with the laudable goal that these proceedings would be cheaper, swifter, more efficient alternatives to federal district court. Unfortunately, that process has been gamed in a way that has undermined the original intent of the American Invents Act. All the top users of the PTAB are big tech companies. Just 5 companies, Samsung, Apple, Google, Intel, and Microsoft, accounted for 80% of all PTAB petitions a few years ago. And 85% of defendants in patent litigation have used it as a duplicative rather than an alternative path to challenge a patent. Briefly, the dysfunction here is that there are different standards of proof between district court and PTAB, so you can proceed on exactly the same facts, exactly the same claim, and reach legally opposite results, and then have to race to federal court to resolve it. A decade of experience has shown PTAB challenges aren't faster, cheaper, or an effective alternative. I have a long set of remarks. I will summarize them briefly and then offer them as a rejoinder if we get into an active debate. This bill essentially imposes a standing requirement, harmonizes burden of proof, eliminates duplicative and repeated patent challenges, and adds transparency. And I want to thank several of my colleagues, Senators Welch, Booker, Blumenthal, Klobuchar, for working with me to amend this bill to ensure that generic pharmaceutical companies and patient advocacy groups explicitly continue to have access to PTAB to challenge drug patents. This bill was never intended to reverse their great work in lowering drug prices. And I want to thank Senator Booker for his willingness to keep working together on improving the bill. There are a number of senators who may have amendments. We'll speak to them if and when they come up. But more than anything, this is a bill that over a decade of work has broad support from the higher education community and business community. 2 former heads of the PTO under Obama and Trump have endorsed it. And Lamar Smith, one of the original authors of the AIA, testified in support of it. I urge my colleagues to vote in favor. And now that the ranking member is with us, we may proceed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Before we go into further debate on the bill, I do want to give Senator Tillis an opportunity to say a word and then recognize Senator Graham.
Not nice Tom was here last week. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank Senator Coons for the work. We had an oversight hearing, and I said to the people who attended that the gavels are going to change hands, but the way that we go about running the IP subcommittee is not going to change, and it hasn't for several Congresses. So I thank them for the work, and I also urge support on the bill. I have a disaster meeting in my office for North Carolina with the governor-elect, and a congressional delegation at 10:30. So it may very well be that I'll be out, but I'm full support on adoption of the bill. I also want to make it clear that I'm for the manager's amendment. I will be against all of the Grassley amendments, and unless I believe unless it's modified, the Cruz amendment. So I do hope to come back. I don't look forward to voting against Senator Grassley's amendment, but I will be voting against those and speaking against them if I get back in time. So thanks again, Mr. Chair.
The next item of business before the Judiciary Committee is Senate Bill 2220, the PREVAIL Act. Senator Coons and Senator Tillis have given preliminary explanation of this legislation. Does anyone else seek recognition at this time? Senator Klobuchar.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just 2 seconds here. I have articles from the Associated Press about the investigation of Prosecutor Khan, editorials from the Wall Street Journal about the problems at the ICC. I'd like to put them into the record if I may.
Without objection, so ordered. Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I'd like to thank Senator Coons for his diligent and perseverant work on this bill, as well as Senator Tillis and other members. The bill makes a lot of positive reforms that would help with abuses to patent challenges. I look at this from that perspective. I want things to work in our patent system. I've been involved in the Inventor Act with way back and helped to get that done. And I see that this cures some other issues. However, my major focus when it comes to costs has been pharmaceutical prices. I led the bill to ensure Medicare negotiates the prices. We're going to be holding the next administration accountable to make sure those next 15 drugs and after that 15 drugs are negotiated. And I've also worked with my colleagues on a bipartisan basis, including with Senator Grassley, on multiple bills to prevent big pharmaceutical companies from using patents to shield their drugs from generic competition. My concerns regard anything that would make it more difficult to get low-cost prescription drugs on the market. And I truly appreciate Senator Coons' efforts to address these concerns in his manager's amendment, and I look forward to working with him to ensure that patient groups and generic drug companies can access the PTAB. We all know that branded pharmaceutical drug companies do use tools at their disposals to maintain control over their most profitable drugs, including wielding patents against potential competitors and ultimately patients. So before I support the final bill on the floor, I think it's critical that this bill, whatever changes are made to it in the future, does not create additional patent barriers to affordable drugs. I also hope that we can ensure the PTAB remains an efficient alternative to litigation for innovative firms to clear away weak patents that never should have been issued in the first place. I truly agree that reform is necessary. That's why I'm voting with Senator Coons and Tillis today. The PTAB should be more transparent and operate under clear ethical guidelines so that patent holders are not subject to abusive challenges that deter research and development. I also agree fees shouldn't be diverted away from the PTAB, just as I fought to ensure merger filing fees are not diverted away from antitrust enforcers, something Senator Grassley and I have done together. So I plan to vote for this bill in committee because Senator Coons has committed to me that he will continue to work to ensure that this bill cannot be used in any way to put affordable prescription drugs further out of reach for those who need them. We are finally starting to make progress on this front with the insulin cap and with the work that we've done on Medicare negotiation. So I'm confident with his skills and Senator Tillis' skills that we will get there. I'd again like to thank the sponsors of this bill, and I look forward to working with you on these issues before the bill goes to the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Klobuchar. Before I recognize any other senators, I want to say personally, I admire the work that's been done by Senator Coons and Tillis on this issue. With dogged determination and inspiration, they have put together a bill which I'm proud to co-sponsor. Years of hard work go into this effort to address issues that have been raised by many different people, particularly to preserve the ability of generic drug makers to bring their products to market more quickly through a manager's amendment that will now be offered by Senator Coons, and we will then commence with further discussion and perhaps consideration of amendments beyond the manager's amendment. Senator Coons, do you wish to
Thank you,
offer?
Mr. Chairman. I'd like to call up EHF 24960, the manager's amendment to the PREVAIL Act, and proceed to a vote on the manager's amendment and the amended underlying bill.
Is there anyone who seeks recognition on this? Senator Blumenthal, as I'm going to call on next, and any others, and Senator Hawley will be after him. Senator Blumenthal.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I want to echo your expression of admiration for the dogged determination, as you put it, of Senator Coons and Senator Tillis. A lot of inspiration and perspiration went into this bill, and I am supporting it with the same reservations that Senator Klobuchar has just expressed so well. I want to make sure that prices of pharmaceutical drugs do not increase. I know that Senator Coons shares this concern, so I look forward to working with him on this effort as we go to the floor. And I just want to add very simply and quickly my strong endorsement of the remarks made by Senator Graham earlier. This ICC warrant so denigrates and degrades the cause of justice. It eviscerates any shred of credibility that the ICC may have entertained. I think it is a black mark for the ICC, but also a step backward for the cause of peace and stability in the Middle East. And I will be working with him, and I hope others will join us in not only condemning the ICC, but making sure that our nation is protected from similar acts by that court and any other court. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Blumenthal. Senator Hawley, before I recognize you, I think, unless you have an amendment to offer to the manager's amendment, no? Then let's move for the adoption of the manager's amendment. All those in favor of the manager's amendment say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The manager's amendment is adopted. Senator Hawley and then Senator Welch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a question, actually, for Senator Coons or any others, probably Senator Coons. I'm deeply concerned about the potential effects here on generic drugs and generic drug prices. I see that quite a number of advocacy groups share those concerns. You just referenced, or Senator Klobuchar just referenced changes that you're making in this manager's amendment to try and address that problem. I'd like to hear an explanation of that if we could before we vote. I'm sympathetic to what you're trying to do here, but I can't support something that's going to increase the cost of prescription drugs for millions of Americans, and I'm deeply concerned that that's going to be the effect of this bill. So I'd like to hear what you're doing to address that.
Thank you, Senator Hawley. And as you've heard, a number of my colleagues, this has been their principal concern. We've worked over a number of months to get specific language that makes it clear that biosimilars and generics and patient advocacy groups retain. There was a concern that the standing requirement would knock them out. And the goal here was to prevent some gamesmanship at PTAB using shell companies and using transfers of ownership. And the concern was that the standing requirement would knock out patient advocacy groups and biosimilars, and thus the potential for generics to come to the market. There is specific language in the manager's amendment that addresses that concern sufficiently that longtime and fierce advocates for this issue, like Senators Klobuchar and Blumenthal and Welch, have joined and committed to voting for the bill, given what's in the manager's amendment.
Chair Durbin.
Senator Tillis, of course.
Senator Hawley, you raised a good point. Back in the mid-'80s, I was a research and development manager up at Wang Laboratories, tech company, but Wang Laboratories in Boston. And when I was making a judgment about the viability, the market viability of a new technology that some engineer or some software developer brought to me, I had to go through and make an assessment about whether or not it was worth the long-term investment based upon how long I would be able to maintain intellectual property, gain a patent on it. And if I wasn't sure, then I would never, if I wasn't sure that I had a long enough tail to recoup what could be oftentimes a very high investment, then I wouldn't authorize the project. Well, in a similar fashion, I think that people who are against this bill may be, I think, obfuscating what's really happening in terms of drug pricing. And I've tried to tell everybody this. I've told the PBMs, I've told the healthcare providers, I've told the doctors, I've told the insurance companies, and I've told the pharmaceutical companies. Every single one of them needs a haircut, but they all need to be in the barbershop. Here's what happens. The PBMs say it's the pharmaceutical company. The insurers say it's the doctors, because or the pharmacists, who are oftentimes also PBMs, say it's everybody else. And they're all kind of right, but they're all very wrong. And if we really want to get to a construct to where instead of high-fiving, when we do arbitrary price cuts on drugs, I'm going to get back to why I talked about my experience at Wang Laboratories, these arbitrary price cuts that are unsustainable. I'll give you a good example. It was in Finance Committee when our colleagues, over the objections of every single one of us, put in price controls, a haircut for the pharmaceutical industry, they all high-fived. They said, we're reducing the price of pharmaceutical drugs. What they failed to mention is that there were several board meetings of several biotechs who said they were going to slash their small molecule research budget by as much as 50 or 60%. This is publicly recorded board meetings. So I guess the point that I'm making is the cost of a drug that is never developed is zero. And so are the benefits to the patients and the victims who could benefit from it. So this is not something that is structurally going to increase it. It is something that I, as if I were an R&D manager at a pharmaceutical company, would say, I have some certainty over the protection of my intellectual property, so I'm going to invest in that rare disease research, which almost always goes off the table because there's very little revenue tail to justify it. So if we don't provide more certainty in terms of, and we always talk about the rich pharmaceutical companies. We don't talk about the billion-dollar bust on an Alzheimer's drug, right? We only talk about the ones that make it and they're making money off of. But that's a portfolio that we only talk about the success, we never talk about the failure. And if we don't provide certainty for intellectual property protection, I guarantee you, my counterpart, like the Tom Tillis of 1985, is going to say, no can do. I'd love to serve that population of 5,000 or 10,000 people who are suffering from this disease, but the numbers don't work.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Coons.
To my colleague, Senator Hawley, I have the specific language now in the manager's amendment that defines a nonprofit that is defined in a way that a patient advocacy group or a generic that is trying to bring a drug to the market and wants to test the patent protection of the branded drug, to make it clear, and this is what brought along several of my colleagues, to make it clear that these reforms in terms of standing would not advance what have been some gamesmanship by Big Pharma to use patents to rise prices. So I'm happy to share this language with you if that's helpful.
We have Senator Welch, Senator Cruz, and now Senator Klobuchar. Senator Welch.
Well, the cost of drugs is just unsustainable, and if you can't afford it, it's useless. And I am extremely concerned about doing everything we can as a Congress to make medicine and prescription drugs in particular more affordable. I thank Senator Coons and Senator Tillis for working with us, Senator Klobuchar and others, on the manager's amendment. So at the final passage, all of us have to be, or I have to be very satisfied that there'll be an absolute ability on the standing to challenge what may be bogus claims. And with that, I intend to support this, the manager's amendment and PREVAIL Act, so that we can put it on the floor. But this topic of the cost to everyday citizens of things that they need has to be addressed by Congress, and is for all the good things that pharma does, life-saving drugs, life-extending drugs, they're killing us with the cost. And there's too much abuse by them of the patent system. The patent system gives them that exclusive period where they're going to be able to recoup their investment and plenty more. But when they start abusing that very system that protects them to punish Americans who need them, we have to draw the line. I yield back.
Thanks, Senator Welch. Now, next in line, Senator Cruz, then Klobuchar and Booker. Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to call up Amendment EHF 24A72, which requires consent for small independent inventors to participate in the PTAB. I will echo the comments of many, thanking Senator Coons and thanking Senator Tillis for their work on this bill. And I think there are good elements in this bill that could well make progress. But I don't think we're there yet. And Senator Coons knows this well because we've had extensive discussions about this. PTAB invalidates claims of more than 3/4 of the patents that it adjudicates. It invalidates 80%. When we authorized the creation of PTAB in 2012 through the America Invents Act, PTAB was meant to serve as an alternative to district court litigation, cheaper and faster, but an alternative nonetheless. But district courts make findings of invalidity for only about 48% of the patents they adjudicate, and 80% is not a fair alternative for 48%. Many inventors can tell you that PTAB is not a fair alternative. Here's one example, David Furry. Let me tell you about him. David Furry is a Texas inventor who invented and patented the Hawk camera, a camera that makes gas leaks visible. It's a problem with oil pipelines, refineries, and derricks, toxic gas leaks. These leaks must be found and repaired, but they are invisible to the naked eye. Before David's invention, someone would have to walk along the entire length of the pipeline holding a device called a sniffer near the leak. It was a slow task that had mixed results. David invented and patented a solution, an infrared camera which uses a cold filter to make the invisible leaks look like plumes of smoke. A user could fly his camera along a pipeline and spot the leaks. The Texas Commission on Environmental Quality gave David their highest innovative technology award and stated that his invention lowered the level of ethylene in the air in Houston by 60%. Because of the device's success, a large corporation wanted to license the invention. But instead of doing so, it used the PTAB to invalidate David's patent and simply take the invention. This technology is what is now used in toxic gas leak detection, and it's worth at least $100 million. David's gotten nothing from it. It's not fair to David or any other inventor who spent years developing their innovative idea and more years patenting it for that inventor to be dragged unwittingly into PTAB to fight the invalidity sledgehammer. PREVAIL helps those inventors avoid successive litigation, but it does not help them avoid PTAB's near total invalidity sentence. This amendment will help independent inventors avoid this death sentence. It allows them to defend their patents to a jury or PTAB, whichever they choose. This amendment gives independent inventors greater control over the life of their invention. When an inventor's patent is sued for invalidity, an independent inventor, and here's how this is defined in the amendment, an inventor that has fewer than 500 employees and that he or his company grosses less than about $24 million annually, that inventor under this amendment has to consent to the PTAB proceeding. They can't be dragged there against their will. And while $24 million may seem like a lot to many people, compared to the tech behemoths that dominate PTAB and send their employees to go become PTAB judges, $24 million is a small startup. And let me tell you what this amendment will not do. It's not designed, and it would not help patent trolls. It will not allow those who are not inventors, those who simply licensed or bought the patent, to avoid PTAB. It doesn't allow trolls to hang the threat of litigation over plaintiffs' heads to extort a settlement. This amendment ensures that the innovation doorway is open to the small independent inventor while simultaneously keeping out the patent trolls. So what I would suggest to everyone here, if you support the little guy, if you support the valiant inventor who sees a better mousetrap, who sees a better light bulb, then vote yes on this amendment. And if you support the giant corporations who are crushing the little guy, well, then you probably should vote no.
Pending before the committee is the Cruz amendment. Anyone wish to speak to that amendment?
Mr.
Senator
Chairman, if I
Coons?
could briefly, I want to thank Senator Cruz for both the spirit and substance of this amendment. I am going to encourage my colleagues to vote no on it so that we can move this bill out of committee. But we've really just begun negotiating what is the definition of a small independent inventor. And I think we've made real progress. Your core point with that example, which is that an independent inventor has a huge risk of having their patent on a new device or object invalidated by PTAB, is one of the core issues here. the different standards, the repetitive challenges. But this amendment defines an independent inventor to have sales or income up to $26 million and to opt out of the PTAB. That is a high cap, which sweeps in a fairly broad range of sophisticated, profitable inventors. It's not quite the tinkering, under-resourced garage inventor that some of my colleagues on this side of the aisle have in mind. Senator, my challenge is, if I accept that, I lose folks who are committed to voting for it today. I would love to work with you to find a way to hit the right point to protect genuinely independent small inventors, because we share the goal of making it possible for the garage inventor to bring to scale a new technology without being killed in the PTAB.
Well, and I thank Senator Coons for that. I will say, as Senator Coons knows, that his team and my team have been working and negotiating and trying to find common ground, and I'm hopeful that after this markup, we'll continue those negotiations and get there. I will say, in terms of the threshold, initially going back and forth, Senator Coons' team had proposed a threshold down around $6 million. We proposed a threshold of $24 million, trying to sweep in. Among innovators and startups, those are still relatively low numbers compared to the Googles of the world and the giant companies that use the PTAB so effectively against the little guys. I'm hopeful we can continue that discussion, and maybe the threshold is somewhere between 6 and 24. But I think the objective of protecting small and independent inventors is a really important objective.
Thank you. I look forward to working with you on it. I do urge a no vote on this amendment at this time, and then I look forward to our conversations.
Chair Durbin.
On the pending Cruz amendment, Senator Tillis.
Senator Cruz, I think you're absolutely right. I do agree with Senator Coons. I'm going to vote against this amendment, but you've got my commitment. If we don't get to the spirit, we can, you are the attorneys, we can debate the details. But if we don't get to the spirit of what we're trying to accomplish here, to maybe tighten the net, you have my commitment that I won't support moving the bill until we do, if it gets out of committee.
There's no further discussion. Senator Cruz, would you like to call your amendment for a vote?
I would.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Whitehouse?
No.
Ms. Klobuchar?
No.
Mr. Coons? No. Mr. Blumenthal?
No.
Ms. Hirono? No. Mr. Booker?
No.
Mr. Padilla?
No.
Mr. Ossoff? Mr. Welch?
No.
Ms. Butler?
No.
Mr. Graham?
Yes.
Mr. Grassley?
Aye.
Mr. Cornyn?
No by proxy.
Mr. Lee?
Aye.
Mr. Cruz?
Aye.
Mr. Hawley?
Aye.
Mr. Cotton?
Aye by proxy.
Mr. Kennedy?
No by proxy.
Mr. Tillis?
No.
Mrs. Blackburn?
Aye by proxy.
Chair Durbin?
No.
Chair Durbin, on this vote, the ayes are 6, the nays are 14, with 1 pass vote.
Mr. Chairman, before the co-sponsor leaves, can we have the final vote on the bill?
Before that, I'm going to announce the roll call that the amendment was not adopted. Is there any other?
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Klobuchar?
I just wanted to clarify what I had said before was I was listening to Senator Hawley. I really do appreciate the work that Senator Coons and Tillis have done in this manager's amendment, but I continue to believe that there may well need to be other changes before I'd vote for the bill on the floor, because of just to ensure that it can't be used to allow affordable prescription drugs to be made available in the marketplace.
And
So,
just
thank
really
you.
quickly, too, I want to thank, Senator Coons has been phenomenal. His staff has been phenomenal in working with us to improve the bill. You said that thank you to us. We want to thank you. We, too, have a lot of, my team and I continue to have a lot of concerns about intentional harm to American patients and a lot of the issues around drug prices, which remain high, making it harder, that this could unintentionally make it harder to bring them down. Your commitment to continue to work with us to deal with the struggles that so many Americans are having to really make these life-saving medications affordable We have to, as a Congress, continue the efforts that we've already made some progress on to lower the cost of prescription drugs. So I want to thank again Coons for his commitment to continue to work with people, as he said here. And with that commitment, that's why I'm going to be supporting this in the vote today.
We have 2 senators seeking recognition and 1 senator heading for the door who is needed for the final roll call. So I urge my colleagues, in the interest of time, to be brief. Senator Grassley and then Senator Hawley.
Well, I'll be brief by saying the amendments I was considering offering, I'm not going to offer, but I would like to just point out a couple things. One, I believe that the process at the full committee level could have been better, at least with the stakeholders briefing for us all to go through these things. And then the process is usually that the stakeholders that have concerns, there's always a sharp divide between supporters and opponents. In the past, stakeholder groups have generally been able to reach more of a consensus on intellectual property legislation. Some concerns that I'd like to raise, and these are just bullet points, limit a party with complex claims to a single petition, bar prior art and arguments that were previously presented to the USPTO but not considered, bar raising in federal court any art that could have been raised in IPR if the court hasn't agreed to stay the proceeding, bar the IPR review if there has been a federal court or International Trade Commission judgment, and restricting who can bring a petition. So I'm going to vote no today. I can't find fault with Senator Coons. He's had good discussions with us, but I think more needs to be done.
Thanks, Senator Grassley. Unless another amendment is going to be offered, and I don't think it will, after Senator Hawley, we will go to a vote on this bill. Senator Hawley.
I just wanted to close the loop and say thank you, Senator Coons. I've now been able to review the language, and thanks to Senator Tillis for his explanation. I continue to be concerned about the potential effect here on drug prices. I note that the patient advocacy groups, many of them continue to oppose the bill even with this language. I'd like to work with you on this on the floor. I think I'm just reversing my colleague's presumption here. A number of you are concerned, going to vote yes to advance it. I'm concerned, I'm going to vote no. Clearly you have the votes on this, but I'd like to work with you on the floor and hopefully get there. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Senator Hawley. If there's no other senator seeking recognition, we'll vote on final passage. The clerk will call the roll on S-2220 as amended.
Mr. Whitehouse.
Nope.
Ms. Klobuchar. Aye. Mr. Coons.
Aye.
Mr. Blumenthal.
Aye.
Ms. Hirono. Aye. Mr. Booker.
Aye.
Mr. Padilla. No. Mr. Ossoff. No. Mr. Welch. Aye. Ms. Butler. Aye. Mr. Graham.
Aye, by proxy.
Mr. Grassley.
Aye. Or no. No, I'm no.
Mr. Cornyn.
No by proxy.
Mr. Lee.
No.
Mr. Cruz.
No.
Mr. Hawley.
No.
Mr. Cotton.
No by proxy.
Mr. Kennedy.
No by proxy.
Mr. Tillis.
Aye.
Mrs. Blackburn.
Aye by proxy.
Chair Durbin.
Aye.
Chair Durbin, on this vote, the ayes are 11, the nays are 10.
The bill will be favorably reported to the floor. Is there any further business to come before the committee? If not, the Senate Judiciary Committee stands adjourned.